Oakland, California, spring of 1973. The Bay Area Open Combat Exhibition has packed a converted gymnasium with close to 4,000 people, the kind of mixed martial arts showcase that was becoming popular in the early 70s. Boxers and karate practitioners and wrestlers, all sharing the same card on the same night, billed as a chance to see which discipline actually held up best against the others. The man dominating the evening is a heavyweight boxer named Russell Kane. He is 28 years old, 6'4", 240 pounds of pure muscle, built through years of serious professional training, and tonight he has worked through 4 opponents without much resistance. A judo competitor who couldn't close distance fast enough to use his throws, a karate stylist who landed 2 clean kicks before Russell's reach and power simply overwhelmed him, a kickboxer who lasted the longest, almost 90 seconds, before getting caught with a hook that put him flat on the canvas. The crowd has cheered every single knockout, the specific electric noise that comes from watching someone genuinely dangerous do exactly what everyone paid to see. After his 4th win, Russell takes the floor microphone the way confident champions do at the end of a dominant night, riding pure momentum and crowd energy. "I want everybody here to understand something," he says, pacing slowly across the canvas. "Tonight you watch the strongest man in this building beat everybody they put in front of him. Karate, kung fu, judo, doesn't matter. None of it stands up against real power." The crowd roars its approval. Then his eyes land on someone sitting near the front row, an older man in his late 60s, gray-haired, but still carrying himself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who once made his living with his hands. His name is Walter Briggs, and 30 years earlier, he was one of the most respected light heavyweight boxers on the West Coast circuit, a man whose fights people still talk about in barbershops and gyms up and down California, even though most of the people in this current crowd are too young to have ever seen him fight live. "Hey, old-timer," Russell says into the microphone, pointing directly at him. "I heard you used to box around here, back in the day." Walter nods slowly, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but too proud to simply look away. "You any good?" Russell asks, grinning at the crowd, clearly building towards something. "I held my own," Walter says, his voice carrying the rough dignity of a man who fought honestly for a living and never needed to brag about it. Russell laughs, loud and dismissive. "Held your own, that's cute." He turns to address the crowd directly now. "You know what's funny? People used to talk about this guy like he was something special, some legend, and now look at him. Old man can barely get out of his chair without his knees popping." A wave of uncomfortable laughter ripples through parts of the crowd, mixed with scattered boos from people who clearly recognize Walter and don't appreciate what's happening. Walter's face has gone tight with anger now, his hands gripping the armrests of his seat. "You don't know anything about what I did in that ring," he says, loud enough that nearby rows hear him clearly. "I know you're sitting in a folding chair while I'm standing here, as the best fighter in this building," Russell says. "That tells me everything I need to know." "You little punk," Walter says, starting to rise from his seat despite his age, despite the visible effort it takes him. "I fought men who would have put you on the canvas in 10 seconds. Real fighters. Men with actual discipline." Russell just laughs harder, gesturing for the crowd to join him. "Discipline? Sure. Sit down, old man, before you hurt yourself trying to stand up too fast." The crowd's reaction has split clearly now, some people laughing along with Russell's performance, others sitting in uncomfortable silence, a few openly booing the way he's talking to someone who clearly deserves better than this. Bruce Lee is sitting in the 3rd row, off to the side, dressed plainly enough that nobody around him has recognized him yet. He came tonight because he genuinely enjoys watching exhibitions like this, different disciplines testing themselves against each other in an honest setting. He has been watching Russell's matches with real interest, noting genuine power and reasonable technique underneath the showmanship. But watching this exchange, watching a young man with obvious physical gifts tear down an old fighter who spent decades earning real respect in this exact sport, something in Bruce shifts completely. He knows who Walter Briggs is. Everyone who takes boxing seriously knows who Walter Briggs is, a man whose fights against some of the toughest competition of his era are still studied by serious students of the sport. Watching him get mocked like this, in public, by someone who has clearly never had to earn anything the hard way, is not something Bruce can simply sit through quietly. He stands up. "That's enough," Bruce says, his voice carrying clearly across the nearby rows, even without a microphone. Heads turn. Russell looks toward the source of the interruption, scanning the crowd until he spots a compact Asian man standing in the 3rd row, dressed in plain street clothes, looking nothing like anyone Russell has fought tonight. "Who said that?" Russell asks, more curious than offended. "I did," Bruce says, "and I'm telling you it's enough. This man earned respect in that sport for 30 years before you were old enough to lace up gloves. You don't get to talk to him like that just because you're standing in a ring tonight." Russell stares at him for a moment and then breaks into laughter, the kind of dismissive laughter that comes from someone who has spent his whole life being the biggest and strongest person in every room he's entered. "Look at this," Russell says into the microphone, gesturing toward Bruce. "We got a skeleton standing up for Grandpa now. What are you, 130 pounds soaking wet?" Scattered laughter moves through the crowd, though plenty of people are watching this new development with genuine interest rather than amusement. "Come on up here then, skeleton," Russell says, waving Bruce toward the ring. "Since you've got so much to say about respect, let's see what you're made of." Bruce doesn't hesitate. He makes his way down the aisle, climbs the steps, and steps onto the canvas. Up close, the size difference is dramatic. Russell towering over him by nearly a foot, outweighing him by 100 pounds easily. The crowd reacts to the visual mismatch with a fresh round of murmuring. "This is a joke," Russell says, looking Bruce up and down. "I'm not even sure this counts as fighting somebody." "You said none of it stands up against real power," Bruce says calmly. "Let's actually find out if that's true." Walter Briggs, still standing near his seat in the third row, watches this unfold with an expression caught somewhere between concern and curiosity. He doesn't know who this stranger is, but something about the calm certainty in his voice makes the old fighter lean forward slightly, paying closer attention than he expected to. The event's referee, sensing genuine spontaneous drama rather than scripted entertainment, steps onto the canvas to establish terms. "This is an exhibition," he says. "Light contact preferred, but full technique allowed. Either fighter can call it." Bruce nods. Russell shrugs, still grinning, clearly viewing this as barely worth his attention. They take their positions. The referee calls the start. Russell comes forward immediately, throwing a heavy right hand with the full power that's flattened 4 opponents already tonight, expecting this to end things just as quickly as everything else has. Bruce isn't where the punch expects him to be. He's already moved, his head shifting 4 inches to the side, and as Russell's arm extends fully past its target, Bruce's open palm strikes his exposed ribs, a clean, controlled blow that makes a sound the front rows can hear clearly. Russell stumbles slightly, more from surprise than pain, and turns to find Bruce, already several feet away, completely unmarked, waiting calmly. The crowd makes a sound, somewhere between shock and disbelief. "Lucky," Russell mutters, resetting into his stance, his earlier confidence noticeably less casual now. He comes again, this time throwing a combination, jab followed by a heavy cross, trying to use his significant reach to control the distance and prevent whatever just happened from repeating itself. Bruce slips the jab, turning his shoulder just enough that it passes harmlessly past his face, and as the cross comes behind it, he steps inside the punch's arc entirely, getting close enough that Russell's reach advantage becomes useless, and taps his solar plexus with a quick, precise strike. Russell doubles over slightly, the air audibly leaving his lungs, and the crowd erupts into a completely different kind of noise now, the specific roar that comes when an audience realizes they're watching something they didn't expect to see at all tonight. Russell straightens up, his face flushed with something beyond physical effort now, embarrassment curdling visibly into anger. "That's it," he says, abandoning any pretense of careful technique. "I'm done playing around." He charges forward with everything, a wild combination meant to simply overwhelm through sheer aggression and size. Bruce moves through it, the way water moves around stone, finding the gaps between each strike, never retreating, always somehow exactly where the attack isn't. When Russell finally overextends on a wide hook, Bruce steps inside, redirects the punch's own momentum with a light touch to the extended arm, and with a small, efficient motion, sends Russell stumbling completely off balance, tripping over his own feet, and landing hard on the canvas. 3 seconds, total elapsed time, from the opening exchange to Russell flat on his back, in front of 4,000 people, who came tonight specifically to watch him dominate everyone else. The gymnasium explodes into noise, unlike anything that has happened all evening. People are on their feet, some cheering wildly, others simply staring in open disbelief at what they just witnessed. Russell pushes himself up off the canvas, his face dark with humiliation and rage in equal measure. "That wasn't a real fight," he says, his voice rising. "You used some kind of trick. Do it again. Real fighting this time. No fancy hand stuff." "That was real fighting," Bruce says, his tone still completely calm. "But if you want to go again, I'm happy to." The second exchange lasts even less time than the first. Russell, abandoning all caution in favor of pure aggression, charges immediately, and Bruce simply isn't there when the attack arrives, having moved at an angle that puts him directly behind Russell's shoulder. A single precise strike to the back of Russell's leg buckles his knee, and he goes down again, this time face first, the impact echoing through the suddenly silent gymnasium. Walter Briggs, watching from the third row, has risen fully to his feet now, his expression transformed from anger into something closer to awe. Russell gets up slowly this time, clearly rattled, the easy confidence from earlier in the evening completely drained out of him. He looks at Bruce with something approaching genuine confusion. "Who are you?" he asks, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier performance. "My name is Bruce Lee," Bruce says simply. The name lands differently across different sections of the crowd, some people gasping in immediate recognition, others clearly hearing it for the first time, without quite placing it yet, though the reaction spreading through those who do recognize him tells everyone else that this is significant. Russell stares at him for a long moment, processing this. Then his pride, still wounded and looking for somewhere to go, finds a new direction. "Fine," he says. "You beat me at your little dance moves. Let's see how that translates to real strength." The event organizer, a sharp-eyed promoter named Sal Petrocelli, who has been watching this unscripted drama unfold with the specific delight of a man realizing he's getting far more than he paid for tonight, steps forward with a microphone of his own. "We've actually got a strength testing station set up for the intermission," he announces. "Grip strength, bench press max, that sort of thing. What do you say we settle this properly?" The crowd roars its approval. They move to the side of the gymnasium floor, where staff have arranged the strength testing equipment originally intended for intermission entertainment. Russell goes first on the grip dynamometer, squeezing with obvious effort built from years of serious weight training, the readout settling at a genuinely impressive number that draws appreciative applause. Bruce steps up next. His grip on the device looks different from Russell's, more precise, engaging specific muscles along his forearm through years of training designed deliberately for exactly this kind of functional strength rather than simple mass. The readout climbs steadily past Russell's number before settling considerably higher. The crowd reacts with fresh disbelief. "That's impossible," Russell says, staring at the numbers. "Look at the size of your arms compared to mine." Strength built through specific training works differently than strength built through general training, Bruce says. Size isn't the only variable that matters. They move to the bench press station next. Russell, with his significant size advantage, posts a genuinely strong number, the kind of lift that would impress most serious gym-goers. Bruce, despite weighing considerably less, manages a number that surprises everyone watching, not because it exceeds what raw mass alone could produce, but because the efficiency and control in his lifting technique extracts every possible ounce of power from a frame that looks like it shouldn't be capable of it. The final test, a static plank hold designed to measure core endurance, follows the same pattern. Russell holds admirably for a strong fighter, his form eventually breaking down from genuine fatigue after a solid effort. Bruce holds his position with visible ease, well beyond that point, his breathing controlled, his form perfect, before stepping out of it calmly on his own terms. By the time the third test concludes, the gymnasium has settled into something close to reverent silence. 4,000 people watching the chalkboard where staff have been tracking results. Bruce's name now sitting above Russell's across every single category. Russell stands there, staring at the numbers, his chest still heaving slightly from the genuine physical effort he put into each test. The anger that had been driving him since getting knocked down twice has finally started to drain away, replaced by something that looks much closer to confusion, mixed with the beginning of real humility. "I don't understand," he says, mostly to himself. "I've trained my whole life to be the strongest person in any room. How does someone half my size do this?" Bruce looks at him for a moment before answering honestly. "You train to be big," he says. "I train to be efficient. Those aren't the same goal, even though people often assume they produce the same result." Russell absorbs this slowly. Then his eyes drift toward the third row, where Walter Briggs is still standing, watching everything that's happened with an expression Bruce hasn't fully read yet. Something shifts visibly in Russell's posture. He sets down the grip dynamometer he's still holding and walks toward the edge of the canvas, looking out at the old fighter directly. "Mr. Briggs," he says, and his voice has lost every trace of the swagger it carried earlier in the evening. "I owe you an apology. What I said to you, in front of everybody here tonight, that wasn't right. I don't actually know anything about what you accomplished in this sport. I was talking about something I never bothered to learn about, just because you're older than me and I wanted to look strong." The gymnasium has gone completely quiet, 4,000 people watching this exchange unfold with genuine attention now. Walter looks at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable at first, then something in his face softens slightly. 31 years, he says. "I fought professionally for 31 years. I lost some. I won plenty. I never once needed to tear another man down in public to feel good about myself." "I understand that now," Russell says quietly. "I didn't an hour ago. Walter nods slowly, accepting this. Then he looks past Russell toward Bruce, still standing on the canvas. "And you," he says, "I don't know who you are exactly, but I know what I just watched. Nobody's ever stood up for me like that, not in a long time." "You earned that respect a long time before tonight," Bruce says. "I just happened to be in the room when somebody forgot it." Walter studies him for a moment, then makes his way slowly toward the canvas himself, climbing the steps with the careful deliberateness of a man whose knees genuinely have seen better decades, but climbing them anyway. He stops in front of Bruce and extends his hand. Bruce takes it. "I watched plenty of fighters in my time," Walter says. "I never saw anybody move like that. Where did you learn it?" "From a lot of different teachers," Bruce says, "and from paying very close attention to what actually works, rather than what looks impressive." Walter laughs, a genuine warm sound. "That's the first thing I ever learned in boxing, too. Funny how that lesson never really changes, no matter what you're studying." The crowd, sensing the genuine warmth in this exchange, begins to applaud, building steadily into something loud and completely sincere, the specific sound of an audience recognizing they've witnessed something considerably more meaningful than the dominant performance they originally came to see. Russell, still standing nearby, looks between the two of them, and something in his expression suggests he's working through something larger than just tonight's defeat. "Mr. Briggs," he says, "would you maybe consider working with me sometime, teaching me something about what actual respect in this sport looks like? I think I've been doing this wrong for a long time." Walter considers this seriously, studying the younger man for a moment. "You've got real talent," he says finally. "I watched you fight tonight before all this happened. That part was genuine. But talent without humility just makes you dangerous to be around. I'll work with you, on one condition." "Name it," Russell says. "You apologize properly to every person in this building who watched you humiliate an old man tonight," Walter says. "Not because I need it. Because you need to learn what it costs to ask for something like that out loud." Russell nods immediately, picking up the floor microphone that's been sitting forgotten on the canvas since the testing began. He looks out at the crowd, takes a breath, and speaks. "I came in here tonight, acting like the strongest man alive," he says. "I made fun of someone who earned more respect in this sport than I'll probably ever earn, just to make myself look good in front of all of you. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. To Mr. Briggs, and to everyone here who had to watch it happen." The applause that follows carries none of the strange mixed quality from earlier in the evening. It's simply loud, sustained, and completely genuine. Later that night, after the gymnasium has mostly cleared out, Bruce finds himself in conversation with Walter Briggs near the building's side entrance, the old fighter leaning against the wall with the particular comfortable exhaustion of someone who has had an unexpectedly significant evening. "Can I ask you something?" Walter says. "Of course. Why'd you actually stand up tonight? You didn't know me personally. You could have just let it play out and gone home." Bruce considers the question seriously before answering. "Because I've spent my whole life being underestimated by people who only look at the surface of things," he says. "I know what that feels like, watching someone do the same thing to a person who genuinely earned their respect the hard way. That wasn't something I could just sit through quietly." Walter nods slowly, understanding something in this that goes beyond just tonight's events. "You know," he says, 30 years ago, when I was fighting, people used to say the same kind of thing about me. Too small for the weight class. Too old by the time I really figured out how to fight smart instead of just hard. I spent a long time proving people wrong before anybody started taking me seriously. That's most of what tonight was really about," Bruce says. "Not the fighting, the proving." Walter looks at him for a long moment, something warm and genuine in his expression. "You ever need anything?" he says. "You come find me. I mean that." They shake hands again, and Bruce walks out into the cool Oakland night, leaving behind a gymnasium that we'll be talking about tonight for considerably longer than anyone expected when they bought their tickets. The newspapers the next morning focus heavily on the spectacle, the stunning upset, the strength records broken by a fighter nobody in the boxing world had clocked as a serious physical specimen. But the people who were actually there remember something different and considerably more important. They remember a young man who built his whole identity on being the strongest person in the room, who learned in the span of one humiliating night that strength without respect for the people who came before you isn't strength at all. It's just size, waiting for someone smaller to show you the difference.